clear all this real quick. Alrighty. Hello friends, welcome back to RPGamers, the podcast where we retrospectively talk about video games, something that we both very much love and enjoy. Today I am your host Patrick with my co-host Broderick here. And both of our Twitter @signs are at the bottom if you want to follow us to see any more of our gaming nonsense and news and whatnot. We both tweet about it pretty constantly, I would say. So thank you for joining me again. This is going to be kind of a very special kind of episode where we will be focusing on doing a this kind of like more real retrospective type of conversation where we talk about a certain series that between the both of us, one of us is really adept in and one of us has little to no experience in, but it's going to be kind of a good thing for this type of conversation because we're going to, one, I might be able to convince him to keep trying and convince some of you to give it a try. But I think at this point, we're in this stage of this genre where everyone plays it at this point. I don't want to say, I wouldn't call myself a pioneer, but I have been playing these games since the very, very beginning. Well, maybe not the very beginning, but close to the very beginning. But before we get started, Brod, would you like to tell us what you've been playing so far or recently?
Yeah, so this week has been kind of just like a grab bag of like a little bit of everything. Kind of the only constant game that I've been playing is Horizon Zero Dawn. I'm doing that in anticipation of course, the sequel coming out next month, Forbidden West.
It's crazy. Next month.
I'm kind of just slowly making my way mostly through the story, just kind of get a refresher on everything leading into it. And then kind of like as far as like side stuff and all that, I'll only really do it like if it's on my path or if I just want to like grind up a few levels and get some new like perks and all that fun stuff.
Right.
Other than that, another one is I actually started A Plague Tale: Innocence a few days ago.
We did it!
I think right now I'm on chapter 3 so far.
Okay.
One big thing is it's already just a very different type of game for me.
Yeah.
As far as like it's very much like focused on kind of like the being like stealthy and like secret or trying to sneak around and making combat like your very last option because you really can't fight at all for the most part. So usually I'm like the type of player where I'm sneaky as much as I can be really until I just accidentally like put myself in a bad spot or I just miscalculate like taking an enemy out and I alert somebody else and kind of just change down from there. But other than that, I've been kind of just jumping between a different few games just whenever I just want to kind of chill out and not really focus on anything. One of them is I've kind of just been going back through the Mad Max video game.
I saw that, yeah.
That one, I've always just had fun playing it. It's kind of just like a mindless card / foot combat game or whatever. The story's, there for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know it, at least to me, it's good, but that's just I'm a big fan of like the character and the universe and all that. But I kind of more just play it just when I kind of want to relax and not really have to focus on much.
For sure.
But yeah, other than that, it's pretty much all the main like things that I've been really putting my time into.
Right, for sure. No, there's the Mad Max game is like fundamentally it's good. I really like it personally. I think the Mad Max games are, or at least the game is really, really fun. I just think I stopped playing it just because of all the busy work. There's just so much little minute, especially if you want to like get the platinum and everything. There's so many like little minute things you have to focus on, and I just kind of don't want to. I rather just, sit down and play and not have to drive around the entire world. I mean, functionally it works though within the world of it, and it makes sense, but I don't know. That might be another topic I might bring up in a different podcast episode.
If I remember right, I think it's like sort of, but not really a prequel to, what was it, Mad Max Fury Road, I think.
The newest one?
But mostly just because it connects to, I think his name was Immortan Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was supposed to be kind of like the same Max character. As far as like set in this version of the universe, I think. I don't know. It's kind of just a weird. The main connection was that the main villain of the game, Scarborough Scrotus, is the son of Immortan Joe, who of course is the villain of the Mad Max Fury Road movie. So I forget how exactly it fits in, but it, like you said, it works. So there's nothing to complain about.
No, it's definitely fun. I like the best aspect is the car building. I really like the collecting scraps and collecting car pieces to essentially like build your car. I really like that. I think that is the one thing they had to get right, and they got it right. It feels really cool and good to build your car, and it's not like something you can do really quickly. You could probably grind it out, but a lot of the sections you have to be a higher level to be able to take on the enemies in hand to hand or with your sawed-off shotgun or whatever gun you're using, your little like makeshift guns that you use. I think it's very true to form. I guess just like, I don't know, open world games kind of intimidate me because it's just a lot more just running around busy work. And it just sometimes that's just a big dedication, which goes into the game I'm playing. So recently I got my second platinum of the year of 2022. My first one was Dragon Quest Builders, which I spent a lot more time on the game than I was imagining I would. I think I spent like 75 hours playing it, and I was not expecting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was not expecting to do that, but it was just so much fun. It was so much fun. The story's actually really, really good. I think quite literally that might be like one of my favorite parts of that game. The other game that I played and got the platinum for was Greek Memories of Azure. Didn't take that many hours to beat that one, but I took a little bit longer because I kind of went into it blind for the most part. Except for when it came to like the speedrun trophy where you have to beat it in 3 hours. And certain other things that I thought would happen but didn't happen, and I was a little confused on. But trophy-wise, at least, it's a really, really good game. It's like a shorter and easier version of Hollow Knight, which is something I'm a huge fan of. It has this. It's a cute little story about some magical creatures fighting off a plague in their forest in their kingdom. It's a lot like, it actually has a big Attack on Titan vibe to it. So if you like Attack on Titan, you're going to get that dynamic with the three main characters. It follows Greek, who's this up-and-coming scout, and he's on the search to find his siblings, and each sibling are playable characters where you can have them all moving at the same time, have them separately. It's a big puzzle solving type of game, because each of the siblings can do a different thing. Like there's Greek who fights with a sword and a crossbow, and he can go through tunnels and do all that kind of thing. Then you have a sister who's magic, who can shoot projectiles as her main attack, and she can glide, so she can cross gaps further. She can't go in tunnels though, but she can swim a lot longer. Like she's able to go underwater and breathe. Her like breath bar, I guess, decreases a lot slowly while she's swimming underwater. And then there's the big brother, who's just basically a tank. He has a sword and a shield. He can block projectiles. He can't swim, and he has a grapple chain to reach different destinations. And when you jump in the water, he literally can't swim, so you will take damage if you jump in the water with him. So having to puzzle it around where there's a big gap of water, you have to leave the older brother behind and take the two other siblings and go on to find a way to get him through. It's really cool. It's a nice little puzzle solving type thing. I'm glad I'm glad I got it when I did. I don't know if I have the case anywhere because I got the physical version of it, but no, it's really good. I'm glad I got it. It's on sale right now for the PlayStation sale, and I am such a fan. I'm glad I was able to play it when I did. It is a hidden gem game for me. But otherwise, besides that, I started back up Immortal Phoenix Rising, and
I gotta get back to that eventually.
it is just the same thing. It's just a bunch of... It is Breath of the Wild done weirdly. I'll put it that way. I think Breath of the Wild is just fundamentally better, but this is just a copy of it. With that being said, though, it's really good. I like it a lot. It is just a lot of busy work. But I finally am gonna force myself to play it until I finish it. I just got to Zeus's Mountain, so I'm pretty close to being done, actually.
Oh, okay.
Turns out you don't have to 100% the game to get the platinum, so that kind of makes me feel better. So I told myself, let me just focus on the story then, and then when I get to the no point of return, then I'll do everything I need to do to get. And I already finished there's only one missable trophy. I already got it. I played it yesterday, and I got quite a few trophies actually. So I'm just gonna force myself to finish it. It's okay. I mean, the dialogue's really cheesy. I don't think it works. I think with the cartooniness of it, I think, it works, but I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of it, as far as like the story and dialogue and writing, but, it's fun. It's really fun to play. It's flashy and it looks cool. So that's another one I've been sitting on for a while. I told myself, I'm going to finish this. I'm going to finish this because it's been sitting on my installed game list for a while now.
Yeah, same thing for me as far as it sitting there. I think it was one of the first PlayStation games that like I bought, other than getting Miles Morales like in the bundle that I got, or PlayStation 5 games. I'm sorry. But just because it was one that like I think I could have played it on PS4, but when I first saw it, like it was just something that at first looked kind of like so new from Ubisoft. It was kind of a little bit different than like the Watch Dogs and like Assassin's Creeds and all that. And I was like, you know what? It's like I'm actually surprisingly interested in this. Normally that kind of like, I don't want to say cartoony graphics, but that kind of like animation style, or
for sure,
however you want to call it. Normally, like I'm not all that interested too, but I think it was just the whole oh god, I'm blanking. Are they Greek or Roman? Greek gods, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think it was just like the whole kind of like you physically dealing with like the Greek gods and all that made it really interesting for me. And then just for some reason actually playing it, it just, I don't know, it just didn't land. Like I don't really understand. Like it's a good game to play. It's fun when it is fun.
Yeah.
But for some reason for me it just doesn't last. And so at first I kind of wanted to platinum it, but now I think I'm more just kind of force myself to get through the story and kind of just get it off my PlayStation 4 just so I don't have to see it.
Yeah.
And get that space back for another PS5 game that I want to jump into eventually.
It's a relatively easy platinum. It's not like too daunting. Learning that you don't have to do everything in the game to get it made me just say, okay, let me just finish the story then, because I still have apparently one more ability or skill I have to get, which I didn't even realize was going to be a thing. I thought I had everything, so I'm assuming it's going to be Zeus's or whatever I'm going towards next for it. But I don't know. I just think that I just prefer how Breath of the Wild's handled more in this one. I mean, ever since Breath of the Wild was a huge influence on this, obviously. And of course, there's Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which that's essentially what this is. It's just a cartoony version of it that's not connected to the Assassin's Creed story. It's essentially the same exact thing, But there's just more to do. I feel like it's more adventure-y and stuff, and I prefer that more. I like it a lot. I don't know. I would definitely recommend it because fundamentally it's a good game and it works. I don't know. There's something about it that just doesn't make me want to keep. I think it's just the open world aspect of it. I think that's what's stopping me. The bigger the maps get in video games, the less I want to indulge in it. The only game I would think now I would give credit to would probably be Spider-Man, because the main aspect of Spider-Man is web swinging, and that is consistently fun to go around an open world. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just, I don't know, it doesn't do it for me. Those big open grand spectacles, I rather keep things short, sweet, and simple with games, focus on making the gameplay funner. Whereas for Phoenix, it's just a lot of mashing the same buttons, and it's got a lot of cool mechanics in it. And I'm assuming on the higher difficulties, it's a lot more fun. But realistically, the higher difficulties just up the damage and health of the enemies, and that's not really more difficult, in my opinion. Which is something we're going to get into for this episode. But yeah, I don't know. I'm going to finish it. I'm going to force myself to get the plot and finish it. And then I'll add that to my list. I have no idea what I'll play next, but so far that is what I have been playing. Moving on to the main topic. So, as I mentioned in the intro, this is going to be something that's very one-sided for both of us. But not really the game series, more so just the concept too, I feel like. Just based on how I know how you play games and how I play games. And how we view games in different ways. This episode is going to be based on the concept of play conditioning, which is kind of a newer, for me at least, newer concept. I've only heard it. I heard it based off this YouTube video. He does a couple of videos, but in one video he coined the term of play conditioning for video games, and it got me. I think about this a lot realistically. And it has to do with a lot of difficulty and stuff. The main series or genre is the Souls series or the Souls genre. So we got Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, Bloodborne, Sekiro, Neo 2, Remnant from the Ashes, Surge, and there's so many other ones that are out there that range from really good to not so good. So with play conditioning, this is kind of up for interpretation. There is no set, this is what the definition is. So I'm going to try to explain it as best as I can, and then I'll have Brod chime in on his viewpoints on it. And it goes with, to start, we'll talk about just video game difficulty. What would you consider, good video game difficulty?
So, I think good video game difficulty to me really just depends on the game and kind of the intention of the gameplay and what basically what the developers and all that want the player to go through as they play the game. And so obviously from essentially the beginning we've always had the easy, medium, hards and all that, and those do either significantly decrease the challenge of say combat or whatever in the game. So players that may not be as good as others, or people new to games or are able to enjoy them. And obviously the hard is there for those that like to challenge themselves. But I think really it all just comes down for me to just the vision of the game, because kind of just to I guess make my point is for example the Dark Souls games, for the most part there is no challenge or difficulty setting that the player can do. As far as I know, the game kind of just is the game.
Yeah,
it plays how it is, and you just got to learn the formula. And it's not like any kind of Call of Duty or whatever, where anyone you play you can just go charging in, guns blazing, you'll get through it eventually. With games like Dark Souls and all that, it's you really have to learn the game you're playing, learn basically what every stat that depending on the play style you want to focus on matters. Learn basically the different enemy types you may come across and kind of what they're able to do and how you're able to beat them and all that. And so it really just for me it comes down to the game and kind of just what I think is kind of the intention of what it's meant to be played as.
So I would say I'm going to propose something. We need to get rid of easy, normal, and hard modes in more games, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
The concept of those stems down to what I had said originally is it's really just increasing the enemy's health while decreasing
Right.
your health. And then there's, again, increasing enemy damage, decreasing your damage. And then you have something I really didn't like with the Guardians of the Galaxy is you can customize it where you can make it so the enemies do pretty much no damage to you doing like one-shot kills. And I'm not a fan of that. I get the idea of the creativity of it, but I think I don't know, I guess like it stems from like your own personal how you personally play games. I like a challenge, but I don't like a challenge where oh, the enemy just has more health. It fundamentally doesn't like really change the game. I like when so this is where play conditioning comes in. I like when games condition you to play them differently than you're used to playing video games. So with Dark Souls, the first one, or we'll even go further, Demon Souls, which is the one I started with. I didn't understand the concept of Demon Souls when it came out. I just didn't understand it. It just was difficult. It was challenging, and it just frustrated me, you know. But it was really popular. I couldn't figure out why. So I kind of sat with it. Never finished it on the PS3 version when I had it. And I just kind of let it be. And I think that when Dark Souls 1 came out, I knew it was like the predecessor, the next thing to it. And I decided to wait on it. Got it later on. And I was able to finish it, but I still didn't get it. Like I slogged through it, you know, and I had help and I had, you know, I struggled and I still didn't get it. Dark Souls 2 came out and I started to get it a little bit. I got through it a little bit more easily because I understood the formula and I was conditioning myself to play it differently. The biggest change for the Souls series was Bloodborne. That was the official like turning point for the whole series because fundamentally it changed the whole dynamic of those games and how you play them. And I think that Bloodborne is a really special game to not only be a stellar masterpiece that it is. It's a 10 out of 10. It's an amazing game that tells a very unique and amazing story with twists and turns that aren't really expected. And it has a lot of themes and social themes, and it has just a lot going on in its story. And I think that it's really neat and it's really exciting and it's great. It's a perfect game. But there's a lot of different things that are going on in all these games that go unnoticed because of that challenge and that difficulty. What Bloodborne did was essentially they just took away the shields. There's no shield. There's one, and they use it as a joke. The item description for it says like shields are nice, but they endeavor passivity to hide behind a shield and block your attacks or whatever the case is. Whereas Bloodborne wants you to be more aggressive and physical. Once you take that mindset to the other games, you instantly have a whole new way of playing them, and they are significantly funner and they're significantly better. So play conditioning is essentially when a game forces you to place it in a way that you're not used to with other games. And I mean, because even with like Immortal Phoenix Rising, I'm playing it on, I believe, the easiest difficulty because there's so much busy work and there's so much to do that I don't want to waste my time with a hard difficulty when realistically the difficulty is just the enemies have more health and they do more damage. That doesn't do it for me anymore. Whereas like Dark Souls, it's very linear. It's very simple. You can backtrack and go all across the world. And it's something that is like the Souls games aren't. I would never say that they're hard now, especially with this new mindset that I have. I give a lot of thanks and praise to Bloodborne for that, because after Bloodborne, I got it, and I was able to do things in these games that I didn't think I ever could do. I went through Dark Souls 1, and I did like a no shield, no armor run, and it was a lot of fun. It was challenging. It opened new ways for me to play these types of games. And now with any other type of Souls-esque genre game that's not within the same company from Software or Michael Miyazaki or Miyazaki, Hidetaka, that there's there's like a certain flow, and a lot of companies are trying to replicate that, and some have done a good job. Like Neo's a good example. When Neo came out, I played the test beta for it, and it was definitely taking inspiration from it. Just it had a different storytelling to it that didn't work as well. Like I preferred the more ambiguity where you're just thrown in and you have no idea what to do and you have to figure it out for yourself. I prefer stuff like that because it's you actually having to play the game to fundamentally figure out how it works. And I just prefer that. That's what the Souls series does. There's another one that came out, or another newer one called Ashen. And I finished that and I beat it and I loved it. There's one last trophy I need to get where I have to beat it on a new difficulty mode. And that's what turned me off from the game. Where it's already fundamentally at that level of difficulty where you just have to condition yourself to play differently. And so adding in a new difficulty where essentially all they do is up enemy damage, up health, lower your health, lower your damage, and it's just fundamentally it doesn't work, because now it's double the work that you have to do as a player opposed to what you already had to go through. And then you have games like Mortal Shell, which are on the grand scheme of things, you could beat it in like an hour, depending on your level of skill. That's something I don't think I would be able to get at, because I would have to spend dedicated time to doing that. I already have the platinum, I'm all set. But it is a type of game where it, again, fundamentally changes a lot of the aspects of what a Souls game can be, because there's different shells, which is what the game's based on, Mortal Shell, and the shells offer different like classes, so there's no inherent like, oh, I'm just gonna level up my strength skill and that's gonna make me stronger. There's none of that in Mortal Shell. It's just the shells, and you can level up your equipment and your swords and stuff, and they keep it really simple. But play conditioning essentially again is just having you can play the game in a very unconventional way, and it makes it better. And I think Dark Souls got the perfect amount of difficulty. The thing about Dark Souls and all those games too, like I said originally, is that you can level up, you can max out your stats, you can max out your weapons, and you can make the game significantly easier on yourself. And I think a lot of people are missing that concept. I think a lot of people just also don't understand what the game's trying to do. I think that's a big factor of why people don't play it. But again, we're in this day and age where I feel like it's very normal to have these games and play them. Especially with like Elden Ring coming out. I think that's going to be a very accessible, it looks like it's going to be a very accessible title for people. Of course, you have Sukiro, which is another From Software game.
Still need to try that
and
one.
Sukiro, it's really, I have it, so you can always borrow it. It is another one where it does the Neo thing where it tells a story, but the story is still ambiguous. They don't flat out tell you really the consequences or what's happening, and it gives you real morality checks while playing it. That's a big thing. That's a reason why I think Dark Souls 2 is probably my favorite of all of them, because of the choice it gives you, and it's so meta with this choice that I think it's one of the most ambitious stories told in video games. because it transcends video games and takes us to our own lives. I think that's really, really cool that it does that when you really think about it. Sukiro is gameplay is very, very different from the other games. It's almost like a rhythm game essentially, which is might not make a ton of sense at its like core, but there is a rhythm to it. It's like a dance, which is how a lot of those Eastern style fighting is characterized in like movies and art and poetry. It's danceful. It's a dance, it's art fighting. And that's what Sekiro does, or Sekiro, I think it's Sekiro does. It's phenomenal. It is a phenomenal game. I'm so happy it won Game of the Year in 2019. Fully deserves it. I think, again, Dark Souls just comes off on top. Then you have games like, God of War. That's another one where it has the Souls formula, but it still has that difficulty mode. I think if you take that away, it would have made God of War just a little bit better. But I think that there's a lot of things in God of War that already makes it almost a 10 out of 10 game that really just fundamentally works. But there's a ton of games out there that are like that. I mean, there's a ton of spin-off Souls games that are out there now. There's one I just got recently on a sale, which is Sinner Sacrifice for Redemption. And it kind of does that similar thing with it. And it's just, interesting to look at. And there's no like difficulty slider or anything, which I like that type of thing. I just think that difficulty sliders and difficulty modes are, we need to slowly start getting rid of them, because it comes down to like no one's growing as a player realistically. Now, if you want to grow as a player or you don't want to really grow as a player, you just want to play stuff for fun, that makes sense because there's a whole dynamic and a whole community of people that don't play games in that type of way. Like there's another game, Ninja Gaiden. The Ninja Gaiden series as a whole, realistically, Ninja Gaiden is a relatively difficult game even on easy mode. So I loved playing those, but playing them on like any other higher difficulty is barbaric. Now, that's not really to say that it's hard or you can't do it, but it is just night and day, and that doesn't work for me. You might as well have just made the harder difficulty the difficulty to play, and if you're not able to go through it, then that's it. I think there's way too much hand-holding in most games nowadays, for my taste. But there's different kinds of difficulty, I guess, is another main point in games where, like, let's say combat's really easy and get through it. What if there's a section where, the puzzle's too hard, I don't know how to figure out the puzzle, or I'm lost and I don't know where to go. Some people like to reference that as difficult, like it's a difficult game, and people say that with Dark Souls, like, it's too confusing to go through the world and to figure out where I'm supposed to go, which, is true for the most part. It doesn't hold your hand. Same with, like, let's say Breath of the Wild, Breath of the Wild isn't inherently like a hard game, but it doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't like force you to like, it forces you to play it and just explore and figure it out. And I think that's something we need more in the gaming like spectrum, where there's no hand holding and you just get thrown in and you do what you have to do, but also offering a fair but challenging difficulty, whereas like, upping the health bar and the attack of an enemy, that's not necessarily fair. It's challenging, but it's not fair because you have to advertently like make it that a priority, and who's going to choose that as a priority? When a game sets it, like the Souls series, when they set the difficulty, then that's just the difficulty it's at. Even like Sekiro, at its base, it's already at that level, but they added a difficulty mode within the game. When you ring a certain bell in a certain location in Sekiro, you increase the difficulty of the game, where like enemies do more hits or they're more aggressive or whatever the case is. They have more health, blah, blah, blah. But you get more rewards for it. So that's a really good payoff. It doesn't hurt your stats. It just raises the enemy stats, and you get like more currency, more money, more better item drops and stuff like that. So doing that is helpful for players who like, okay, so I need this certain item, I should turn this up. And it fundamentally doesn't change the game. It just means I have to be more patient with combat than I was before already. It doesn't really change the aspect of the game. It is just like a way of, getting more items essentially. But it doesn't, that's a difficulty where I look and I'm like, wow, this fundamentally doesn't change the game. Whereas like Immortal Phoenix Rising, you put on the hardest difficulty, it fundamentally changes the game for the worse, especially with how much busy work there has to be. And then you have another game like Dragon Quest Builders that doesn't have an inherent difficulty. The Final Fantasy games, except for 15, don't have an inherent difficulty setting. And that's something I really appreciate with those types of games. I think like even with like games like Kingdom Hearts, my favorite playthrough of a Kingdom Hearts game is when I did my Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix level 1 Kingdom Key only run, and I was able to beat the entire game by just doing it like that, do all the worlds and do everything in it, because it opened me to new ways of how to play the game. And fundamentally, like looking back at all the Kingdom Hearts games now, I don't think I can play on anything lower than critical mode or like the highest difficulty, because it fundamentally forces you to play it in such a different way, and it makes you appreciate the game so much more. So it all sends back all the way back to Bloodborne when that came out. That fundamentally changed my whole aspect and outlook on video game challenge. Whereas the game's not really a challenge, you're probably just not playing it correctly. You're not getting the concept of it, Like you can go through Dark Souls, and people have been able to beat Dark Souls 1 without a weapon at all. They just use their fist. That's a possible thing to do. And if you're able to do that, if someone's able to do that, what's stopping like an average person from just picking up a weapon, maxing out its stats, and going to town on all these, enemies, and progressively making it easier for yourself to get better. You start at like this low point, and it's just interesting. Dark Souls 2 does a very interesting thing too with its starting classes. There's only one starting class in Dark Souls 2 that has a shield. Where he has a shield, his only weapon is a broken sword. So you're picking the defensive option opposed to having like an option to actually kill enemies, where now you only do like 1 to 2 hit points of damage. And that just fundamentally does not like work. And I think that's a really unique thing that Dark Souls 2 does. So Dark Souls 2 is already getting to that point. And then I think Dark Souls 2 also fixes the health system. I think aside from Bloodborne, Dark Souls 2 makes it a lot more accessible for people to play with its healing, because it allows for an easier traversal throughout the game with it. Whereas Bloodborne, you have only the one type of healing, but you have an unlimited stock of it as long as you have to farm for it. And then Dark Souls 1, of course, you have a set amount, and you have to use that set amount to get through. And then you have Demon Souls, which is a broken system with its healing, where you can have like unlimited amount of healing items, and if you have unlimited amount of healing items, you essentially can never die. So like you can grind and build a store of them, and it just makes it so much easier. But I like the concept of like, oh, if you want more health flasks, you have to go out, and this is in like Dark Souls 2 and in Dark Souls 3. In Dark Souls 2 and 3, to get more Estus flasks and healing potions, you have to find the shard, take it to the bonfire, so you can have multiple, like in Dark Souls 1, where you can have up to 5, up to 10, up to 15, up to 20. But you have to find them in the world, and it incentivizes you to like explore the world more. So there's a lot of like big things with that. I don't know, is there any game you can think of that really like challenges your your play conditioning of how you play a game fundamentally?
So, like, kind of like how you said in the beginning, how this topic will kind of, it's really one-sided for us.
Yeah.
Like, you're really into, like, the Soulsborne or whatever they call it, like, the kind
Oh
of the
yeah.
Dark Souls formula.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Meanwhile, I've gotten to, in Dark Souls 1, Ornstein and Smough, I don't even know how far that is or how
That's
not far
halfway.
that is.
That's halfway.
Okay, yeah, so I've gotten to them. I've never beaten them, but that's kind of the furthest, like, boss that I've
Hmm.
made it to.
Which is a
Um,
like a very impressive feat, you know, because you have to do a lot of shit to get there. You have
Yeah,
to go
and
through.
I did that on PC too.
Yeah, and that's already an atrocious port as it is. I mean, you have to go through Sen's
Yeah.
Fortress. You have to
Uh,
fight all the other bosses. No, that's like a big thing for sure. That's like a huge, you know, um,
yeah.
because
And
Ornstein and
then like
Smaug is rough. It's rough, especially if you do it solo. It is rough to do.
yeah.
On casual playthroughs, if I'm not trying to challenge myself, I always summon Solaire, and I just let him distract one of them so I can take out one of them. And
Yeah.
no, it's yeah, but no, that's like a far distance.
But yeah, like I haven't played Dark Souls 2 yet. Dark Souls 3 I did the very like first little boss battle, like the intro one. And then I don't think it played any more than that. Cuz I think that I don't know if I was like doing a game share thing on my PlayStation at the time or if I had played yours, but
Hmm.
that's as much as I played of that one. Bloodborne, I barely scratched the surface of it.
You got to the blood-starved beast, and you were struggling with that boss.
Yeah, which I
Um,
think the one that I was at was an optional one. It wasn't like the
it was,
main
yeah,
one.
it was an optional boss to get
Yeah,
you into the Chalice dungeon, which the Chalice dungeons are really cool if you want more of the story. It has a lot of big story moments and a big like it's very much you don't have to do it, but if you really care about the story, then that's what it's there for. That was the thing too is I hate when people try to hold my hand with video games. Um, and I don't want to do that to you. So when you were playing
right.
that, part of me was like, I should tell him that you can skip this. It's optional. Come back to it when you feel more prepared. But but that defeats the whole purpose of those games, where I just tell you where to go and what to do. Um, with like exploration wise, like there's nothing like your first playthrough of a new Souls genre game where you just fundamentally have to learn it yourself. Um, So I don't really want to be like, oh, you can skip this. You don't have to, or like tell you about like all the little shortcuts to skip whole sections in like Dark Souls 1, which is really nifty and cool. But um, is that all or what else?
No, so kind of what I was gonna get into
Yeah, go for it.
is as far as like play conditioning in a type of game that I'm interested in, and
Yeah.
that's something that I kind of want to more sit down and get into, are
Hmm.
the the ways of playing strategy games like XCOM, or kind of one that
Okay,
I've
for
more
sure.
gotten into lately is Empire of Sin.
Yeah.
And so, kind of as far as this style of strategy games,
Hmm.
um, the first one that really like got me back into it was XCOM 2.
Hmm.
And I don't remember if that one had like difficulty settings or anything.
It
It's been a
does,
while
yeah.
since I've actually played it.
It does, yeah.
But okay, so yeah, so like for example, that one has difficulty settings, and then Empire of Sin doesn't. This
Hmm.
one is just how many like locations do you want in your game to have to fight over, and then how many bosses,
Okay.
and then it just drops you right in. And kind of like as far as the play conditioning for these style of games, it's something that I need to really like adjust the way that I like look at it and play, is really like the management of like the systems of the game and how they
Yeah.
work. Because like for I'm more familiar with Empire of Sin right now, so that'll be my
Yeah.
example.
Yeah, of course.
But so for Empire of Sin, basically just kind of to make sense of what this game is, it's a of course strategy game, XCOM like, set during the 1920s Prohibition period, and it's all centered around you pick as one of 14 like gang bosses to play as, and then the whole point of the game is to just try to take out the other bosses and take over Chicago while maintaining like your like notoriety and wealth and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much like a just simulation of like the mobster life and all that fun stuff.
So
But
as far as combat, real quick, because like most like XCOM, this is actually I want to say too, this is actually a perfect example of play conditioning too. Like this is like on the money for it, where
mhm,
it makes you really think about your strategy. It makes you think about how you're supposed to get through this type of combat. I think that is like a great example. The difficulty sliders are there just to, again, it doesn't do the thing where it does the thing where it increases the enemy stats, but it doesn't hurt your stats. So you just have to figure out new ways to get through it. And I think that's really important, especially with those types of games early on. I'm assuming
right.
with Empire Sin, it's especially on higher difficulties, it's probably pretty difficult because you don't have a lot of options. You know, you have to, let's say, I don't know, let's say you have guns, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So you can shoot a gun. I'm assuming there's multiple different types of guns. There's probably like, pistols. There's
Yeah,
probably a
so
Tommy
there's
gun.
like handguns, shotguns, machine guns,
Hmm.
light machine. Well, I don't know about light machine guns, but kind of just like the basic like weapon or gun classes.
Right. And I'm gonna, again, this is just me assuming because this is how the other games work. Let's say, oh, you have like the starting pistol. Later on, you can get a better pistol that's more accurate. So when you make those like percentage shots, you'll be able to hit them more. Does it have that kind of thing? Or are you
Yeah,
that
so
far?
there's so basically each character has like their own like specific like specializations, and like some can only use like
Hmm.
shotguns and like pistols or whatever, but they also tend to be more like just more proficient with those type of weapons since that's the only ones that they can use.
Hmm.
And then while like the bosses, the which are like kind of the main characters, but they can use any weapon they want.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
yeah, so like the weapons, like you get each character starts with like a basic primary and secondary weapon, but as you go through, you can either out of either like missions that you can do or just kind of random events that happen or through the black market upgrade those and kind of get the ones that do like more damage and that are
Hmm.
more accurate, or all kind of like the basic things that upgrading weapons traditionally does.
Right.
And then another thing is that each character also has like, I think the main skill is like marksmanship, which
Hmm.
affects like their percentage to hit and then like crit abilities and all that.
Right.
Like some are also like they have their variabilities on that. Like for the bosses, depending on the weapon they use, they can hit from just about anywhere.
Hmm.
And then meanwhile, some other characters they're only better from like longer range because the game also has like traits and all that for each character,
Yeah.
where these are just like randomly set like characteristics that just that gangster brings along as you
For sure.
like get them, and that's kind of like a lot of like where your decisions on hiring certain people
Hmm.
um
No, this is a great example.
like feel your thing.
Yeah.
But for example, I have one character who's my doctor. She's better using like rifles or sniper rifles because her marksmanship is better at a long range because she's literally nearsighted.
Right.
And so it's just like it's the game kind of factors all these things in ways that kind of make sense, and sometimes where I'm just like, really? Like I actually have to deal with a character that's nearsighted,
Hmm.
but it's just one of those things where it's like, no, you know what? That's the game. Like, this whole thing is literally about managing your people and having to like really put yourself in the mindset of like, if I was, doing this kind of thing, who are the people that I want around me to go do these things with?
Yeah.
And so yeah, there's kind of like a lot of things that affect like the overall like kind of difficulty, like of
Oh,
at
for
least like
sure.
the combat encounters and
For
everything.
sure. That's a
But
no. This is a perfect example actually, because the thing too is like there's never gonna be you're never gonna get to have two players have the same exact outcome. Like
right,
there's no inherent strategy to beat it. This is a game. Those type of games are games that condition you constantly because you're always having to adapt. The nice thing about them is while the game adapts and challenges you more. As the story goes on, they'll throw more enemies at you. They'll throw flanks at you that you're not expecting. They'll throw new abilities you haven't seen before. Like, let's say, for instance, Mission 1, the enemies don't have grenades. Mission 2, they have grenades now, so you have to account for your placement. If you have your characters bundled up too much, then they can all get blown up, and that's a big thing to XCOM, for sure.
And especially for Empire Sin in the combat encounters, everything literally comes down to whether your boss stays alive or not. Because if they die in combat, that's it for you.
Yeah.
You have to restart the game and do it all over because obviously your main person died. But like as far as like some of the things where the game kind of like forces you to have to like adapt to its systems and all that is one thing that happened to me actually pretty fairly early on that frustrated me enough because it put me into such a bad position so quick that I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just restart the last like 30 minutes that I just did because I'm like, that was such a horrible place to try to get myself out of.
Right.
But basically, like what I was doing was one of the like neighboring bosses to my little like precinct that I started out like control with. Every now and then, like the ones that are in like your area of the city will send out little like scout parties where they'll just go around and check on like what the other bosses are doing. And my initial like introduction with like one of the first ones that I came across, like I kind of just did like this kind of like sort of like friendly but also neutral, like, oh, like I'm here now, kind of like get used to it kind of thing, you know, I hope we can make this work, sort of like deal. And sort of, you know, a few like weeks in game or whatever pass, and I started getting this thing where it's like, oh, this gang wants to like set up basically like a trade deal with you, where, you know, you give them so much alcohol a week and they'll pay you, you know, whatever amount. And so I was like, you know what, I'm doing actually very well on like my production on that. I'm way over what I need. So let me just put out a little extra to get that extra money.
Right.
And so once I, you know, got the money to be able to like build a new like building whatever in my area, I kind of had the idea of like, you know what, this, you know, trade deal is kind of working out. Let me build another brewery, that way I can produce more and maybe like this will help the deal go up. It actually did the exact opposite because I built the brewery and got it all going, and then the next in-game week that gang canceled their trade deal with me. And then all of a sudden was like, oh, you know, you're encroaching on my neighborhood. Like, you know, learn your place, back off. I'm here.
Right.
And I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
Like, I did this to help you. Like, what do you mean? And then out of nowhere, they just declared war on me. And at that point, I'm just like, what did I just do? What? I'm sitting here like this whole like deal was over. Like, you want alcohol? Okay, I have more.
Yeah.
Like, this was to help both of us, and now you're calling war on me.
Yeah, because they can just steal it.
Like, immediately they send out, like, an 8 or 9 person attack party, take out my, one of my first, like, not stronghold, but one of my, businesses. Because at this point, I have, like, no security, because I haven't really upgraded that, because that attracts more, like, police presence and all that.
Right.
And so they instantly take out one of my places, and so that was the point where I'm like, you know what, no, whatever I just did, let's not do that.
Right.
And so I kind of just reloaded my save and kind of just went from there. It's like, okay, well, I got to be careful of the game, or of like these other bosses just flipping on a dime on me.
Right, for sure. No, this is like a perfect example of it. I think the only thing that really holds it back is just the pure fact that you can do that midway through a fight. You can leave, quit, and restart the entire encounter. And I think that I don't know, because I do it. If they're going to give me the option to do it, I'm going to do it. I did it a lot when I was playing Fort Triumph, which is another probably more of the unknown variety of these type of like XCOM style games. If I can find it, but yeah, it's like whenever I would like, oh, I didn't do good on this encounter, I better restart, or I lost someone, I better restart, because there's permadeath there's permadeath in, you can have it in XCOM, you can have it in Fort Triumph, another
Empire Sin as well.
Yeah, and there it is. And another type of game though, which now I'm going to recommend to you even more if you get the chance. One of them you already have. If you like the XCOMs and you like the Four Triumphs and you like Empire Sin, and I know you've already played like the demo of it, get into Valkyrie, because that's essentially the same exact thing. It's that strategy. It's more war based. Once you hit that, dude, go into Fire Emblem, because that's exactly what Fire Emblem is. That's what makes those games really good, Fire Emblem. Especially
when I played the demo of, it was Valkyria Chronicles 4.
Yeah.
And no, I remember really liking it. Now I have it sitting on my PlayStation. I just gotta get to it eventually.
It's a good one.
Yeah, I've been wanting to. It's just I end up deciding to play something else. So.
For sure. No, and I know you have it. That's why this is me trying to like just trust me. It is if you like these type of games, then you will enjoy this a lot. The Valkyrie Chronicles series is essentially just that, where it's like a lot of setting up. It's, turn-based combat. Essentially, that's what it is. It's turn-based combat, but on a more grander scale, where you have to worry about, what if that guy moves over there and takes on this person? This is what I have to do, and I want to put my guy in a position where he's not going to get shot at. Oh, there's a pretty good % chance I'm going to get shot here. I need to move out the way, or I need to get behind cover. And again, it all comes down to RNG numbers. But you have enough control over it where you can lower the RNG numbers, which is something I like when it comes to RNG type stuff, where you can control the RNG, but there's still that like 1% luck factor, or like 10% luck factor, like 1 to 10%, depending on your situation. No, this is a really good example of play conditioning for sure. XCOM is a very, very popular series, I would say. At least I think so. There's so many different stems off of it. Like with Fire Emblem, the same thing. If the main character dies, then that's game over. So you have the main priority is keeping him alive. But you also want to keep all the other characters alive, because the more they start dying, the less characters you have to go to the next mission. So it's like chess essentially. It's like a strategy type of, you want to play like for the long-term game. So Empire Sun sounds like that's pretty much exactly what that is. XCOM, of course, is like the sci-fi alien versus man type thing. And XCOM's really fun. Part of me really wants to go back and play it again. I just know that it's more of a commitment than, let's say, like Fort Triumph for me. Fort Triumph was just something just new. It was the same type of gameplay and combat, but they added a physics mechanic where you can pull enemies towards like a rock, and they'll push the rock forward so they can push that rock into another enemy and do damage and stun them. Or you can pull trees down to pull trees on top of people to either kill them, knock them out. It's almost like a one-shot thing, to be honest, depending on how strong you are, what like perks or abilities you have. Like some perks allow you to do more damage with that kind of stuff. And there's some perks and there's 4 different classes, and you can do, the archer is completely broken in Fort Triumph, where you can attack up to 3 times in one turn with the archer. But the thing is, you have to build him correctly. You have to have the right perk set up, and you have to hire the correct like person with the starting perk, and that really sets it off. And then once you level them up more, you get to pick certain perks, and sometimes sometimes they don't get that perk. So like one archer will have the perk to shoot, like have a free shot essentially, where they can shoot with an arrow without taking an action. Another archer won't have that perk, so you have to kind of build your team in that way. And sometimes this is where RNG is a big factor. You might not get it, and it comes down to, you have to work with what you have, with what like is on your plate and what's on your team, No, those games are really, really fun. Anything turn-based, really, but these types of strategy essential games are huge. The only thing that Fire Emblem doesn't do is you can't build up like your base or anything. It's just building up your team. Whereas like it sounds like Empire Sin and Fort Triumph and XCOM, they do that, where you build up your base to have, you get more resources. The more resources, you can do more development. More development, you can get new weapons. new weapons can unlock new skills. New skills can help you beat certain levels on certain difficulties. No, this is a good example of like increasing the difficulty doesn't inherently make the game difficult. It just makes you play it differently. And I think that's a big factor of it for sure. Especially with it. The only thing is that that's within that type of game. Whereas like Dark Souls and Bloodborne transcends all games, where you start to want to learn every little mechanic to get through certain difficulty modes, to where, like, for example, Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, my level 1 Kingdom Key only run, fundamentally I had to relearn the game to get through it. And it made me appreciate it more. And it made me love it even more because of that. And I give, again, Bloodborne thanks to that, because I wouldn't have experienced these games in a whole new light. Even Kenya Bridge of Spirits that just came out, my initial playthrough, I was at like an 8 out of 10. I was like, this is really good. I really like this. This is fun. I enjoyed this. It's short, sweet, simple. You unlock a fourth difficulty mode. I said, okay, and you need to beat it to get the platinum. So I said, okay, cool. I'll do that then. That difficulty fundamentally completely changed my outlook on the game, and it brought it up to a 9 out of 10. Just for that difficulty alone. Because the big thing is like, it does it where, the enemies are increased, but you don't decrease. You have the same amount of set skill. You just have to play differently. And the fact that it conditions you to play differently is what raised the bar for me. It's like, okay, so now there's an option where you can just play the game and just beat it and just say, I beat it, that's it. You want to get the platinum and you're looking for the higher challenge, it's right there for players like me. And that's something I really appreciate when games do, where it has the option of giving us a certain type of difficulty that's really challenging, where everything has to be perfect and on point, and you have to find a new strategy to beat certain things. I think that's really neat and really interesting. It just all stems back to Bloodborne. I think that is one of the most influential games, for me at least, not only just me, but even arguably for all of gaming. It's very influential. I don't think there's one person I've ever heard say that this is a shit game, or it's a bad game, or it's a good game. It's either great, amazing, or perfect. And that's what really fills me with just so much joy and happiness, because that it influenced my whole gaming aspect. Whereas now I'm more willing to try things try different types of games, because now I want to see what other types of games offer. I think Bloodborne's the real stem of like, oh, I'm not just going to play main title stuff now. I want to try everything with this new gaming aspect, and it's fundamentally changed everything for me. In terms of difficulty, in terms of just trying new things, and it's really neat and it's really nifty. Because I think that's the same time I've gone to XCOM, and it just changed everything for me. And now there are certain games that like I look at, I'm like, dang, I beat that entire thing. I got the platinum without dying. Like Kingdom Hearts 3, when that first came out on Proud Mode. Granted, Proud Mode's a piss take, but it's I was able to beat it and plat it and 100% it without dying. And then same thing with Spider-Man on the highest difficulty when that first came out. I was able to beat it, plat it without dying, because I was at that level because of Bloodborne, where I was able to condition myself to use the tools that I have in my arsenal to overcome the challenge. And that's a big thing for me when it comes to difficulty in games. I don't really know if you have another example, but that's like the main gist of it. I think that even like games like Hollow Knight, I mean, that just fundamentally takes a style of gaming and gives it more difficulty without having a difficulty slider, where it's just, you have to figure out how to beat these bosses, where it's fair, but it also conditions you to do things like differently. And then you have games like let's say Final Fantasy X, my favorite game of all time. There's no difficulty slider on it. you can make it easier on yourself or you can make it harder on yourself depending on how you go through the game. Like if you're just going through the story, you're probably going to struggle later on in the game and things are going to get harder. Whereas if you take your time, you grind and you level up, it's going to make things a lot easier on you. And you can learn different aspects on how to get through games and such things. But games that just increase difficulty by decreasing your stats and increasing enemy stats, it's a challenge, but it's an unfair type of challenge, in my opinion. I think there's a lot of fights. There's a lot of good fights and there's a lot of bad fights. I think another example too is like Devil May Cry, which is historically known as like just a relatively difficult game, regardless of its difficulty, like Ninja Gaiden. But I don't know. I think that's just, I guess, my hot take on it. Then you have games that like, you know, like Has Been Heroes and Guards that are, they're not difficult in the sense of like its combat or its difficulty. It's just difficult because there's a lot of strategy and a lot of quick thinking you have to do, and that's a lot of like, that's a really cool like aspect to gaming that I really appreciate, which is why I like those games. Because they force you to think like on the fly, and I think that's a big important thing. Do you have any more examples maybe, or?
Honestly, no, not really. As far as ones that I really experienced that kind of fit the idea of play conditioning that you're going for was really just like the Dark Souls and, you know, XCOM, whatever type of game. Because really, other than that, like a lot of the stuff that I play is generally the same like formula, just whatever
variables.
Yeah, variables. Thank you. I was hitting a wall with that. That try to, you know, give it a different personality or whatever. But no, I think everything that you said, where you're coming from, is like, it's a great idea. Honestly, it's something that, you know, should be considered, because, you know, eventually just the traditional easy, normal, hard, whatever is going to get worn out.
Yeah, it's just kind of, you know, I don't know, it's getting I wouldn't say old, but it's because it's been like here since the dawn of video games, essentially. You know,
it doesn't offer anything new anymore.
Yeah,
it's just, oh, do I want to be slightly weaker and the enemy's more harder, or do I want to be overpowered and the enemy's just weak because I don't feel like having a challenge?
Oh, here's another one that I know you have played. I don't know if you beat it. Jak 2? You haven't beaten it?
Never beat it.
Okay, that's another one where it doesn't have a difficulty slider. It's inherently difficult, but that's another great example is Jak 2 of like, it conditions you to play the game a different way, where you can't just bum rush it like the other games. You know, this is a type of difficulty where it's balanced, it's fair, and challenging without having to do an easy, normal, hard, insane mode or whatever. Where, like, for me, I've beaten it multiple times, but the first time I beat it on the PS2 was, like, excruciating. It was there's many days where I would just quit in frustration and say, I'll come back to it tomorrow, or I'll come back to a different day. Finally beating it, it made me feel really good about myself, but at the same time, I was like, I don't know if I want to play anything like this again. I don't know if I want to play the third one because of this one. But the third one's significantly easier. Then the PS3 version comes out, and I was like, I'm going to go back to this and try it. And I started to get it. I still struggled, but I understood it more. Then it came on the Vita, and the Vita is just not a proper way to play that game, unfortunately. It's rough. Just because it's just kind of too big of a game for the frame rate to handle, and it would get really choppy, especially the third one. There's a mission in the third one where it completely froze, and I sat there for 30 minutes. A mission took me like damn near an hour to finish because it was so slow and choppy, but I was able to beat it and finish it just because there's so many enemies on the screen. And then Jak 2 on the PS4 collection came out, and of course, gotta get it, gotta play it. This is the first time I played it though. for Jack 2. But that's another great example of like play conditioning, because later on in the game, the further you get, the more guns you get to accommodate the new challenges they're throwing at you. Like you'll start with like the scatter gun, then you'll get it's the red gun, then you'll get the yellow gun, which is like a sharpshooter type gun, where you can fundamentally shoot targets from further away and stun lock them if you hit them enough times. And you have like this very simple generic health bar. Of course, the more kills you get like the Dark Jack mode to help you with combat in certain situations. The Dark Jack just melts bosses. So if you're ever stuck on a boss, there's that. But also there's the racing too. And that's a new style of game type of game where it's like, it's not like how you drive in the regular world. It's like an actual race and you have to get through it,
Right.
And there's different outcomes, so you never know what's going to come at you. You never know what's going to happen. Things and enemies and even NPCs in general can just act differently to get in your way and stop you on one move or on one like try. Then the next try is like it's a completely different thing. Another one fundamentally, actually, which is might surprise you a little bit, and is actually really, really popular, is Minecraft, where there's on PC, on the Java edition, there's hardcore Minecraft. If you die, your entire world's deleted. So that could conditions players to play in a more careful, slow-paced way, because if they like, let's say they play for like 100 days and they die, they lose all that progress. So
Right.
it conditions you to play safer and actually play everything in the game. Like if you watch hardcore players, they'll have massive farms with all the different types of animals and all the different types of crops, and it's like, oh well, how much diamond do you have? I don't have that much. I'm focusing on making sure I have a livestock first. And you have to build walls around your it conditions you to play the game differently, and that's like a big thing for me personally. I think that's a really nifty thing to have us do. Same with like Outlast. Outlast is a game where you can't fight. Your only option is to run or hide, and sometimes hiding doesn't even work. And it's like a puzzle solver type of thing too, and it's on top of all that, it's just terrifying at the same time, But there's a difficulty mode where if you die, you have to restart the entire thing from the beginning. But it's also not a long game, and it's very doable for literally any experienced gamer. Especially if you played it multiple times and you know what to do and where to go and like the little 6 spots to hide, then you can do that. And it conditions you again to play the game differently because of that type of difficulty where like it doesn't change anything about the gameplay. The only thing is if you die, you have to restart. Like the enemies aren't more aware. It's not like that or they do more damage. It's nothing like that. It's just if you die, you have to restart. And that's like I think the furthest I got, I was actually really close to finishing it because there's a trophy for that, to beat it on that hardest difficulty, which essentially is beat the game without dying. And I got pretty far. I think I got like 3/4 the way through, and then I had a slip up, and that was it. And I said, okay, maybe I'll try this again one day. But another one too is like, look at like the Resident Evil games, which is something I know you're very familiar with, like very, very familiar with. Like I did hardcore, I think, right away on my Resident Evil 2 playthrough, and we both had very different like experiences. We talked about that a little bit where, I'm struggling because I can't find any ammo and bosses take a lot more shots to take down. I have to play this. I have to play it differently than you did. I have to, again, it comes back to play conditioning. I had to condition myself to play it differently. And I think that's especially for survival horror, that's how survival horror should be, where you have to problem solve your way out of it. Whereas like, now I just have a bunch of ammo and stuff to go through, where you have to be very meticulous and careful with your ammo and your healing items too, where you have to make sure to only use your healing items unless it's absolutely necessary. What are your thoughts about that for like Resident Evil?
I would say that one is kind of the play conditioning itself is kind of conditional on the game.
Yeah.
Because the original kind of run of Resident Evil is so different compared to what it became in kind of like the 4, 5, 6 era.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
then compared to how it is now.
Yeah.
Because, like, the original ones, like, with the kind of, like, tank controls, the top-down and all that, that was kind of more, like, trying to fight is your very last, like, resort. Like, you only do that when you know you have enough ammo and you know, like, it's safe for you to do so.
For sure.
That's more or less save it, like, everything for, you know, the boss fights here and there. Well, yeah, with, like, in like Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5, 6, and all that, it's more like, okay, yeah, on the harder difficulties, that one's definitely the play conditioning is I have a lot less ammo, the enemies are a lot tougher, like, I have to find kind of different ways of getting through this rather than just shooting everything in the face and moving on.
Well, I would say with 4, 5, and 6, I was going to say more so the difficulty doesn't really change a lot of stuff. Because you still can have unlimited amount of ammo. Whereas in like Resident Evil 2 Remake, let's say, the game takes away ammo, you know, but in 4, 5, and 6, you can have as much ammo. So those are relatively easier to get through regardless of the difficulty, especially if you do like New Game Plus or whatever. But because you can always just play in the hardest difficulty, continuously just replay chapters. When you replay chapters, you store up ammo. Those ammos, you know, so that I would say that's easier, and that's not a big play conditioning thing. But with like, you know, let's say like 7 and 8 too, when you play on a harder setting, especially if you're not doing like New Game Plus or anything, you're just playing flat out like I did with 8 and 7 on the hardest setting. Like the enemies aren't necessarily tougher, but you have limited resources. And that's what makes it, because the enemies fundamentally, they go down the same way. They're not more aggressive. They might take a couple more bullets to get down. But the biggest challenge of it is like, okay, I don't have a lot of resources. I need to play very meticulously, and I need to be very careful with what I do and what I shoot with.
Right.
Like, is it worth doing all the collectibles on the hardest setting? Probably not, because you have to use bullets. You have to utilize your knife more. The knife makes you run faster, so speedrunners will just hold the knife in their hand when they run and only shoot when they absolutely have to. And then you have, like you said, the original games, which are peak survival horror, where you can only pretty much fight when you have the ammo to do so. Otherwise, it's just running around figuring out the puzzles and surviving. I think with Resident Evil 2 Remake, they brought that kind of system back where, you know, especially with Mr. X, the only way to really stop him is to hit him in the head with a magnum blast. It takes him down right away in one shot.
Right, but that's valuable ammo.
Exactly. So is it worth using 6 bullets of my regular handgun to take him down? And it's not even to take him down, it's to stun him. So, and it only lasts for a couple seconds, you know? So that's like a big thing.
The thing with that one is, in Resident Evil 2 Remake, I found that there is not necessarily little, like, loopholes, but if you're able to, like, track them in certain parts of the building and kind of, like, open doors, like, in certain patterns and all that, he kind of gets lost and you're able to free yourself up for a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, there's still that, because then you're kind of conditioning yourself to, like, learn this route of
patterns,
like, the police station or whatever, for example. That way it's, you know, everything I need is in, like, this corner, so I'll loop them here, get them lost, and then run back, do everything as fast as I can or whatever.
That's a big thing, too, is memorizing the freaking building, because the building can get really, really frustrating. I had that moment on stream where I was like, oh, I know where I'm going, and I didn't know where I was going. I was like, oh, shit. And I died because of it, and I had to restart from a while back. And I had to do a lot of steps to get to there. But where I was frustrated at the fact, I was more frustrated at myself for making that mistake. I wasn't really frustrated with the game because the game gave me the winning option. But I as a player fundamentally messed up. So I was more like, damn, I goofed. I blew it. And that's something I appreciate where I'm not frustrated with the game because it's still fair. I think Resident Evil 2 Remake does that really well. on really any difficulty, because the enemies don't change in any of the difficulties. You still have to deal with the same exact things. But I mean, on easier difficulties, if you have the ammo to spare, you're going to kill the enemies to make it easier for yourself. Or you're going to shoot Mr. X to make him stop following you, right? And higher, it's like, I don't have a lot of ammo. So that is like, within itself, the higher difficult, like, let's say if you play the game on easy mode, you beat it, I'm going to try hardcore now. Oh, I have to play this completely different than my first playthrough. That's play conditioning, where a game fundamentally with its difficulty forces you. That's like another example of, oh, you can raise the difficulty, but the only thing is it decreases your stock and the bosses take a couple more bullets to kill, you know. But it doesn't make it more aggressive. It probably adds like an extra enemy or two.
Right.
But like, because when I played it first on hardcore mode, which I think is the definitive version of the game to play. Mm-hmm. And you would tell me, oh, I didn't remember an enemy there. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's different. But for me, as experiencing it for my first time, it was like, that's just how the game is. So running through on the other difficulties to get like the platinum and whatnot for like speedruns and whatever, it made it easier. And I didn't have to condition. So if I did it the reverse way, I think I might have a better opinion on it. But because I started with hardcore, that is what pushed me to like, this is how you should play the game. This is literally the only difficulty you should play this on, because this is true survival horror. Whereas the other difficulties, like, they're handing you ammo like it's candy. You know, it's easy to get. There's multiple bundles of it and all that kind of stuff. But
right.
Those games are fun to speedrun too, because once you learn like where the thing too is like, the only thing I wish they put items in a different place on different difficulties, or on new playthroughs, because that would fundamentally also change how you figure out like, okay, so I need the crank. I know where the crank is. Let me go get the crank. Mm-hmm. If they had put the crank somewhere else, that would also condition you to play it in a different way. It'd be frustrating on multiple playthroughs, but
well, that's one of the things I liked, especially about Resident Evil 2 Remake, is how depending on if you were doing like the Leon A or B run, or like the Claire A and B, mm-hmm. like depending on whichever run you were doing, the items did get flipped, because it's like kind of simulating like, oh, like mm-hmm. Leon already came through here, so now you got to come through. Right. And there's either items missing or things, or, you know, their placement is changed mm-hmm. because like it's been moved or whatever. That was one thing where I mm-hmm. really liked, but equally got frustrated with, because I get in, I'm already in the mindset of like, you know what, this thing is here, this item's here, and then this goes to here, this goes to here. Like, I know the path. Then I get there and I'm just, where's the crank? Like, why is this not here?
Didn't that only change
like, oh, it's over there?
But didn't that only change like for bullets and like herbs and stuff? Because like on like the Claire, let's say you do Leon, then you do Claire, sometimes you wouldn't even need the crank. You would have to you would do like a different path than Leon did essentially. But the items, like the ammo and stuff, it's like, well, shit, I don't have that now. But that still is like item placement. No, but that's still a really good thing though, where it's like, oh, I know there's a whole like first aid kit or whatever in this room. I can go grab that and I'll be good. And it's not there. It's like, shit. It's because I grabbed it in. That's essentially what it is. But I think for like this, I'm more so talking about like the story items where, you know, like, oh, you have to get like the key card in a different spot or whatever the case is. But it just wouldn't work though, because those are like story related things where you have to go there for this thing.
Like they're there to trigger certain events, and then
yeah, exactly. So fundamentally that wouldn't work in this type of game where it's very story heavily. Whereas there's probably other games out there where I'm sure there are, where it does that exact thing, where each playthrough everything is in a different location and it makes you play in a different way. Because with speedrunning those games would be really, really just daunting to do. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there's a ton of games out there that, you know, condition your aspect of like a difficult game. Like even look at Cuphead, you know. Cuphead's another one where like there's two different difficulty modes, but only one progresses you. One is like you can play it and beat it, but it's on easy. Basically. Yeah, practice mode, but it's easier. It's not the same type of it's not on the same level of difficulty. But right. If you don't beat it, or if you beat on the easier setting, you don't unlock it or complete it. You have to do it on the real difficulty, and I think that's really cool to have that, you know. And it's another game where it's very simplistic, but you have to be on point with your dodging, your jumps, your timing. You have to have the right. Again, you can have the right abilities though that make it easier, and you can make the game easier on yourself. You know, where you know that's a big thing for it. I think a big example too that I feel like we should mention for this type of play conditioning style of gaming is with fighting games, because a lot of the time with fighting games, if you're versing someone online, and you lose, it's not the game's fault. It's not RNG's fault. It's not anything's fault, but literally your own, because when you're versing someone online in a fighting game, let's say like Tekken or Street Fighter, you're playing on the same equal level as the other player. So you have to condition yourself to play it differently than you're probably used to if you're playing it solo or whatever the case is, you know? Because you're versing someone who understands fundamentally, can do the same things you can do, and changes the dynamic of that game. That's another big one is fighters. That's a whole different conversation though with fighters. But that's another one where play conditioning is a big factor. I'm not really too sure. I mean, there's so many other examples out there, but I think that giving the players, if we're gonna continue with doing like difficulty settings, we need to do difficulty settings where it either takes away tools from you, or what it shouldn't do is just increase the health bar for enemies, because I think that's inherently lazy difficulty in video games. Like even like Skyrim and even like Fallout and like the Elder Scrolls and the Fallout games, they do that where you increase the slider. All it does is just it makes the enemies harder, and it creates a challenge, but it becomes like this unfair type of challenge where they're maxed out with like armor, or they do like triple damage or whatever. That's a big case for Oblivion, is they do like insane amount of damage. You can die in one hit, and that's a big factor. Yeah. Even with like Fallout 2, it's Well,
because the Fallout games, like I don't know if it's necessarily all of them that have this, because I don't think Fallout 4 does. But like the one specifically that I instantly thought about was in Fallout New Vegas. It has the I think it's either called hardcore mode or survival mode. I forgot which one. But that one, it's where the regular, like, let's say like the story mode or whatever a Fallout is, plays as like a normal shooter RPG. Just go upgrade your guns, upgrade your character, be able to beat the progressively harder like encounters and missions or whatever. But if you do like the hardcore mode or whatever, that one's just like, hey, all that eating and sleeping and drinking and literal like like metaphysical like body care that you did not care about that entire playthrough. Yeah, you have to now.
Right.
And so that time you really think like, oh, it's been like, I've been walking around like 9-10 hours now. I should go let my character get some sleep. Or it's like, oh, my character's hungry and I don't have any food. I gotta go find food real quick. That one, it's like while you're trying to do all the normal like RPG mechanics and the normal Fallout like fighting and crafting and all that, it's also like paying attention to do I have enough food to get me through like a few days, enough water to get me through a few days until I need to resupply. That's why I'm so just like
I would say that's good. Fallout personally,
76 failed.
Yeah,
because that was literally the perfect Fallout survival game. But unfortunately, it wasn't what it had the potential to be.
Right. I would say the survival mode, because Skyrim added this with its creation club, where they added survival mode where you have to eat. If you're in cold weather, your stamina bar goes down. If you don't eat enough, you get hunger, and there's different stages of hunger, so your health bar gets lower and lower. If you're too tired, I think either your stamina or your magic bar goes down. I think that kind of stuff is a good challenge because you just get to play it in a new way, and that's what's exciting. But Fallout 4 does do the difficulty slider where there's easy, normal, very hard, legendary, and what that does, it literally just increases enemy difficulty where they have more health, they do significantly more damage, and you get like better like drops, like you get better like item drops or whatever. You get like the more rare stuff, like when you look in chests, like it rewards you for that, but it increases the game in a way that's like, because you have the same amount of bullets and everything. That's like lazy design to me, where okay, nothing really changes, then I just have to shoot them and not get shot at. Nothing changes, it just becomes more of a frustrating experience because now it takes more time to take down these enemies. Whereas if they take away the extra drops and stuff, then that changes the game fundamentally, where it's in a way that's like, I have to play this differently now, but like with like survival mode, that's where it becomes interesting because now, I mean, in Skyrim, I never cook. I never do I never sleep.
Right.
I only sleep. I don't even sleep. I do like the wait thing where you press the touchpad and you have to wait.
Yeah, just wait like
I do the
3 hours, whatever.
Yeah, I do the wait. Same with I just wait. I don't sleep. I never do that. Survival mode fundamentally makes you do those things. So you have to play it. You have to condition yourself to play it differently. So I guess that's a big part of it.
No, like I was the same way with Fallout. Like I never did the survival world. Like especially New Vegas, I was too busy wandering around. Like let me see what I can go find. Like I don't want to have to constantly stop and like, let me make a little campfire because I got to sleep a couple hours.
Right.
No, like that time is more time where I could go finding like another vault or something out in the wasteland. But that one, it's like that literally completely changes how I look at the game.
Yeah, and play it too, because it adds a difficulty where it's a challenge, but it's a fair challenge because you're given all the resources to beat it. But if you don't play in a way that's careful, you can't blame the game because the game tells you, hey, this is what you have to do to beat and survive and thrive in this world is you have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to do normal human things, and
I'm fairly certain you can literally starve to death in those modes.
Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, you can. Yeah. You can. Minecraft is another one too that does that. Except if you starve and you're out of health, it leaves you with like at least half a heart. Obviously, anything fucking kills you though, and that anything kills you with half a heart. So, it doesn't insta kill you, but that's still like a big factor, I think that a part of me wants to do a whole different Skyrim, maybe even a series of where I just play on survival mode and just do a couple episodes of me playing it, but we'll see. I don't know if I want to sit down and do that, but no, there's a ton of different things like that where Giant Quest Builder does it too, where it can kill you by if you starve your playable character and you don't have all your hunger meter filled. It decreases your health by I think 1 or 2 points, but when it hits 0, that's it kills you, and that sucks. I think another thing I would love to take out, and this is gonna be another big like no for I think the masses of the community with video games, is take out autosave because that also conditions you to play it differently. Giant Quest Builders does not have autosave, so when I text you guys and I said, oh, I was at the last boss, and he gives you the option, join me and join my side, and I was at this point I already got the story, I already beat it, I'm just trying to get the platinum, and I'm skipping through the dialogue, and I pressed yes by accident, and it kills you. So I had to completely restart that whole playthrough because of that, and I'm like, damn, that's on me. I blew it, and I need to be better. I need to play this better. I went through it again. I finished it faster actually the second time because I already knew what to do. Because of it, I had it fresh in my mind. But take out autosave. It's a bitch, but take out autosave because that will condition players. It will condition players to play more carefully, be more strategic, and play it in a different way where it's not like, oh, I have this safety net. You know, I prefer that because the thing too is like there's a lot of games with like hidden mechanics that aren't ever explored, unless you're playing on a higher difficulty. Like for Kingdom Hearts 1 Final Mix, if you play on critical mode, you can do level 1 no XP. If you have the no XP ability, they don't tell you this either. This is like a super like if you're not a part of the community and you don't like vigorously study these games, you're not going to know this. But it's a big thing in the speedrun community. Like you have to do it to speedrun. It's called damage storage, where I think you do, if you don't do a full combo, so you do a 1-2 hit, stop the combo, 1-2 hit, stop the combo, 1-2 hit, a certain amount of times, it increases the damage of your magic. So you can like one-shot bosses with only a couple spells. But you have to play in that way for the entire time. And again, that's another like hidden mechanic that we wouldn't know about if we didn't play on those higher difficulties. And I think that's like a really important thing, you know? I mean, look at like how you play Bloodborne. Now when I play any other Souls game, I don't even bother with the shield. I do not even bother. I like playing like in my offhand I'll have a wand to do magic, and then I'll have like either a great sword or an axe, and I just two-hand it, and I'll buff because I remember I played online with someone on my Dark Souls 3 when I was trying to get the platinum, and I was doing some summoning, and I got invaded, and I just had like the very starting bastard sword, just this very starting great sword, the very first great sword you can get with like the lowest stats, and I buffed it with magic, and I beat him. He sent me a message asking, dude, what kind of sword do you have? I said, I just have like the regular bastard sword. How did you beat me with that? I'm like, because I know how to play the game. You can literally do it with any weapon. I think that's one of the coolest things about Dark Souls. The only thing that I don't praise Dark Souls for is actually the weapons, because there's like 5 different bastard swords. There's like so many different types of weapons of the same variety, and it's like, why, you know? Then you have Bloodborne, where every weapon, there's no repeat. They're all fundamentally different weapons with different playstyles, and that's something I like a lot. Same with Mortal Shell. There's 4 different weapons, but they fundamentally have different playstyles. But there's only 4, so whereas it's a limiting option, it also just makes it better because it's limited, where you have to, you know, because that means there's a weapon for every type of different person, you know. And then Neo, they have also the same thing with how they have a ton of different weapons, but they all play differently, and there's a weapon for someone out there for everyone, you know. If you want to be quick and fast, use the Kirasama, which is what I like to use personally now. And then you have the dual swords if you want to do like multiple hits in one swing, or you have like the basic katana sword, which you can either be fast with. It's like the standard weapon essentially. You have the spear, which keeps you distance, or if you want just like a big just one shot hit weapon, you get the axe or the hammer, but it's really slow and methodical. It just is based on your play style. So there's a lot of things that come into play conditioning. I think this is, again, I didn't coin this. There's a YouTuber that coined this, and he said it was the first time he's ever heard of it, so I'm going based off of that. It was the first time I heard of it, and I think that it's a really important aspect to gaming that just isn't really talked about enough, you know? But I have to also keep in the mindset that people don't play games religiously like we do, where, you know, there's like that added difficulty and so on and so forth. But I think that it's just important. I think it's a big part of gaming and gaming culture in general that, you know, there's challenge to it. That's what I like. That's kind of mostly the reason why I like getting platinum trophies. I like to challenge myself to see, like even for just getting platinum trophies, it's like, well, how many can I get in 1 year? Can I beat my record of last year, which was 34? Can I beat that? I'm up to 2 now. It's possible I could do it, but but I have to pick the right games to do so with, So do I want to play something like Dark Souls or Final Fantasy X, where it takes me like 200 hours to get the platinum or so, depending on like servers and whatnot, and just like the longevity of it and difficulty. Like, do I want to spend time on a game it only takes one playthrough, it's 20 hours, but it's a 7 out of 10 difficulty, where it's just like difficult to do? I'm going to be kind of inclined not to do that, for that. But, there's so many different aspects to gaming that makes it really, really big. I mean, you named a lot today, which is really cool, So you were able to grasp this concept as well, regardless of like Dark Souls. Dark Souls is just like, the base is like the minimum, that is like the perfect amount of difficulty, in my eyes. And thankfully, I'm not the only one that thinks that, which is a big thing. So hopefully I have rekindled, to be punny, your need to want to play those games again, the Souls games, or anyone out there. Hopefully I restarted the fire for you, to give it a go. But
I was gonna text you separate, but I might as well just do it here. Well,
what is it?
You were talking.
What's that? I can't see it. Is that Mortal Shell? Oh yeah.
Yeah. I just went ahead and downloaded Mortal Shell real quick, so.
I'm gonna be honest. Playing Mortal Shell will give you the same effect as like will be a better entry for you, and I say that because one, there's no how do I put this? There is a currency and there's like the Souls thing. I think it's just better. I think it's an easier entry for someone because there's no shields. You have to get parrying down. You're very limited with your weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And you're very limited with your stats. Like, you can't, I'm just going to increase my strength stat. You have to find the shells to do so. I think that is a good entry for you to start in. Otherwise, it would have been Kronos before the Ashes. But you still have to finish Revenant from the Ashes. That's if you care about the story and the lore. Because there's a lot of like, oh, so that's how that happened. Oh, so that's how all this started.
Right.
And it's really cool for me to have seen that, because that was like a big part for me, was the story. That is a whole different bag of holding to go through, though, is the story and the themes of these games, which we will tackle later on with the show. But because I have a lot of opinions about the story. Dark Souls 2 is peak for me for how meta it was. And that's not even a Hidetaka game. That's not even a Miyazaki game. That is a whole different director and a whole different team working on that. But they're still like the heart and soul of it, but they fundamentally changed it to make... Some people were so disappointed with it. There are some things that are kind of like, what the hell? But, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really hurt it.
Right.
The series, at least. But, I don't know. I like Dark Souls 2 a lot and Bloodborne a lot. Another good one is of course Demon Souls. That is probably the easiest out of all of them to within the actual series to complete. To beat even. It's one of the easier ones because there's so many free options that you get. Like in Demon Souls, there's no one way to play the game or to go through the story. You can do... There's 5 different portals or 5 different areas with sub areas. You can tackle them in any order you want. So let's say you're struggling in number 1. Okay, let me go to number 2 then, and play over there, level up, get new items and stuff. Oh, I got past the first boss in area 2. I guess I'll keep going in area 2. Oh, I can't do it. Well, let me go back to area 1. Now you can beat the boss in your first try because you have a better understanding of the game, and that's really good. With Mortal Shell, I think that there's a lot of... I think it's going to be good for you. It's short, it's simple, and The healing items are very limited though, so you have to be careful with that. And of course, the weapons settings are a little different. There's no shield, so you have to require on like dodging, getting your parries. But with hardening, it makes the game a breeze when you harden, which is essentially the game's shield.
Right.
I don't know if you're up to it. Try and get the platinum. Try and beat it with the one-hit kill mode on, which is a really fun way to play it.
Yeah, I think maybe if I manage to get through it like a couple times and really get it down, that'll probably be something I'll try.
It's worth doing, because
Yeah.
if you could beat Mortal Shell, you have fundamentally everything you need to do to beat the other games. For me, it was easy because I'm already used to playing those types of games. I'm
Right.
already at that level of like, I don't need a shield, I don't need a parry, I don't need any of that stuff, where I can get through it without those tools. But I think the biggest thing is just a shorter, and the story is still ambiguous, but it's it's not like a huge part of it. Like, you don't have to go to like different sections, and it's not like I mean, you do have to go to different sections, but it's not super daunting. You could take your time with it, and it's really nifty. I think the biggest thing is the healing stuff though. Make sure you're paying attention to those, because you only get a couple of healing things. I think there's mushrooms and bread. Bread is very, very rare to get though. That's like, I think, a one playthrough type thing. But mushrooms respawn every time. And they don't heal you immediately. They're like, oh, this heals you like 5 points of health for every second. There's 4 different shells. Like the starting shell is like a very balanced one. They all have similar abilities too, and also different abilities, and also different perks. Like, there's one where your stamina bar is like maybe only this big, but then your health bar is like this big, so you could just be a tank, which is what it's designed for. And there's different weapons and styles to go through. There's your basic great bastard sword, like big sword. I wouldn't say it's a long sword because he holds it like it's a two-handed sword. Then you have like a giant claymore, like in the promotional or in like the cover art that you have right there that you downloaded. And then you have like a hammer and sickle, which is really fast. It doesn't do a ton of damage, but it's really fast. And then you have like a magic staff that produces fire for its like special effect and its ability, and it's good for like keeping distance. That's a good one. And again, for all the listeners, that's something I would recommend too, is Mortal Shell. I would recommend all these games. I think that if you really give it a fair try and you really, really dedicate time to just trying it, you're going to get it. Once you get one of the games, you're going to get all of them. And they're going to be so much more funner to go through. Mortal Shell is a good start. Of course, I would always be of the opinion, start from the very beginning, or start with Bloodborne. I think Bloodborne really is the game that unlocked the fun factor, because it conditions you, it gives you like a new way of like viewing the game and how to play it, and different ways of how to play it. And I think that's very important. Like, there's been multiple different streamers that play it, and they play it one way, and then they play Bloodborne and then go back and play the other games and say, I finally get it. I get why these are fun and why these are so good. And I get how to cheese them. I get how to beat these with no problem. And I think that there's a YouTube group that I'm I think they're definitely my favorite. Their new channel is called RKG. They were originally a team on the IGN UK, like division of IGN in the UK. And they had this series called Prepare to Try, where they take this guy who's never played any of the games or even really heard of them, and he plays them, and they try to see if he can beat them. And you can see from the first Dark Souls to all the way to Sekiro, he is a very different gamer. He's very different. He takes things very methodically. The show's really funny too, so I guess shout out to them. And they left IGN to start the new channel, which is RKG. They're really funny guys. They're really, really funny. They're wholesome. They're one of the few groups on YouTube that I really dedicatedly support nowadays. They do a ton of different stuff, but that was like their flagship thing was like the Souls games. But I don't know. Is there anything else you want to add maybe before we sign off here?
Well, no, I think I'm good. I've pretty much said everything I had.
My hope for this episode is, and this is like the main inspiration to why I wanted to start this podcast, is to really give a new way of thinking to gamers, to open them up to new ways of like interpreting how games can be played. Again, if you're not big on, this is really like for people like us who dedicate our lives and our time to playing games, you know, like I'll choose playing a video game over doing adult stuff, you know. Even when I hold my baby, I'll still hold my controller and play while I'm holding him and rocking him and stuff. And he'll just knock out sleeping or watch me, you know. Like this is for people who like generally like care about these games and want to learn more about them and dive deeper into the mechanics of them. Because every game has hidden mechanics and different ways of doing things that you might not know. Especially games like Dark Souls, especially games like Fallout and XCOM and Empire Sin, which apparently we're going to recommend too, because it sounds like good. I might end up getting it too, actually, but we'll see. I have some other stuff I want to get through. I still got to get through freaking Phoenix Rising, but that's going to be a slog. Because I got that when I got my PS5. That was like one of the first PS5, not exclusive PS5 games, but one of the first games I got for my PlayStation 5.
Right.
Because I knew it was coming for PlayStation 5. I already knew I was getting it, so I said I might as well just get that version of the game. So if that's all you wanted to add, something else, go for it.
I kind of got the idea for this just based off of what you just said, but kind of one of the main things of like kind of why I wanted to start this too was, you know, obviously we're no like professionals or anything. Nobody in the industry knows who we are. We're just
for sure.
The people that give them money and support them, but even then, that's not saying that, you know, that there's nothing to learn from this, or, you know, someone can see this and pick up on things that they didn't know. Because, you know, I get that even everywhere, like on some of the podcasts that I listen to that are like centered around gaming, like they'll feature like fan questions and all that. Mm-hmm. And people will ask things about certain games where I'm just like, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
And, obviously we get like the expert answer or whatever right after that, but there's literally a lot to learn from anybody in this, and especially from two people who have literally put their entire lives into gaming. Like, it's just, this is something that we do
to retrospectively talk about.
That's obvious, but it's just something that we do because it's just who we are.
It's just to retrospectively talk about games and why we love them. And look back. I think that play conditioning has, like I said with Bloodborne, I've already said it multiple times, but it changed how I view games. One game did that. That's why it's up there. It's not my favorite of all time. It's a close second, though. I think just, again, with Final Fantasy X, which we could do in a separate show, is just so much more impactful for me on that kind of level.
Yeah,
I think that
explains my point there, because like obviously I had never even heard of that, like of that phrase, at least regarding to games, and yet as soon as you explained it, I was immediately able to like, XCOM 2 did that,
like
and
latch
Empire
onto
Sin
it.
did that, this game did
Fallout,
that. So,
it's applicable everywhere.
I said, you can literally learn stuff from anyone.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I thought this would be good for both of us. My entry would be like the Soul series, because that's where I learned it from, and that's what conditioned me to play game. The thing is too is like, it's not just like the Souls games, it's all games. Every game I've conditioned to play them differently, explore every nook and cranny like I used to on the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1, and have that new sense of like, I want to see what these games have to offer. And sometimes games, I look at games, I'm like, oh, this has a lot to offer. But like, let's say for like, I don't know, racing, or we've talked about like Forza Horizon 5 or whatever, I look at that and I say, I don't know what I can really get out of that, because I don't see, like, I could go outside and drive myself and I'll get the same experience, Like, I want to experience something different and new and something bold and exciting that challenges me and challenges my perception of like what a game can be. Again, that's more of a personal thing, but that's just how I look at it. So I don't know, there's a lot of games out there that I still haven't played and that I want to play. I still have a whole library and backlog of stuff that I haven't even downloaded yet, that I bought months, years ago. I mean, and there's just so much on here and up for grabs to talk about and list off. But so if there is a game that does condition you to play games differently, you have an example, let us know. That'd be awesome. We would love to hear about it. I think that that is the core, like you said, it is the core aspect of why we wanted to start this. This is one thing that like I wanted to bring up in a conversation is play conditioning, because regardless of the game, it is something that spans all across gaming that I feel like just isn't talked about enough. And we'll do more stuff like this. We'll do more down talks like this, and sometimes we'll just talk about games that like just our opinions in general. Like next week, I think, unless Broderick here changes it, we'll have something exciting too. But so again, thank you if you listened and joined us. We appreciate it. I think that we finally have like a good flow and a good stylization here. Again, if there's something that you have out there, even like for a theme that you want us to talk about, then we could put our input in on next episode, and that's something we can do. We're by no means popular, so I'm not expecting it, but we want to put it out there because everyone's voices deserves to be heard. We are like the average Joe gamer type thing, where we're not well known, like Broderick said, but we still have been in this for a long time, and I think that more perspectives is what makes gaming great. It's what makes it grow. It's what makes it better, in my humblest opinion. I think there's a lot of things out there in terms of gaming. You know, we're going to touch on a lot of aspects. I'm sure eventually when we get to it, we're going to do music. That's Broderick's department. That is his main biggest like fandom thing, I would say. And he's very big into it. There's a couple games that I know of that he got into because of the music. And I think that music is very powerful, but it's not talked about enough. And it's very looked down on, you know, and it's upsetting, but that's more to come, a little sneak peek. Do you have any final remarks or closing statements you want to add?
No, I think I'm all good now.
Right on. Well, hey, thank you so much. This has been RPGamers, Retrospective Gamers. Again, our Twitter @ are at the bottom there, underneath the little console symbols and in between RPGamers. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day. Just keep gaming.
Yeah, see you guys.